Welcome to the D-Shift podcast, where we provide inspiration, motivation, and education to help you transition from the challenges of divorce to discover the freedom and ability to live life on your own terms. Are you ready? Let's get this shift started. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the D-Shift podcast. And it's always nice to find somebody to come and speak on the podcast who has a really unique approach to helping support women going through divorce and other life transitions. So I want to introduce you to Kristen Curtis. She is a certified EFT practitioner. She does Akashic records reading, and she's also a spiritual coach. And Kristen really works to help women reconnect with their intuition and remember their inner power beyond trauma and challenges that we all have to go through in life. So, Kristen, I am so excited to have this conversation and talk to you.
Yes, me too. Thank you so much for having me here.
And your perspective is going to be formed, I think, from a little bit of your background. So tell us a little bit about why this is such an area of focus for you and how you came to sort of understand that this spiritual side needs so much more nurturing than we probably give it.
Yeah, so when I first was on my journey of I did EFT first. So I became an EFT practitioner first. And I loved it so much because it really helped us connect with that inner power that we have. And it helped, uncover what I already knew to be true was that I know what I'm doing. Like, I know what is happening inside of me. It's just a lot of stories, programming experiences that kind of cover that up. And when I started realizing that, I was not needing to search outside myself, but really search deeper within is when I started incorporating more of my spiritual practices into my work. And, the cool thing about the Akashic records is that you are receiving messages right from your soul. So the way that I work, it's simply as a vessel to provide those messages. And I think that there's probably nothing more empowering than receiving messages from, your essence, which is your soul. And it can really help us, navigate and gain clarity and knowledge about what we want to do here. So that's why I feel spiritual practices are so important, because it really delves straight to the root, of your purpose in your life. And it helps guide you in a way that, is unmatched to anything else.
So thank you for that. And I want to go back because just because not everybody is familiar with all these terms, honestly, if you'd asked me like 5 years ago, I would have known what EFT was, but like anything like Akashic records, anything that was too woo-woo was like, nope, don't know and don't want to know. But I changed my opinion on that. So let's start with the EFT. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is and what people may know it as kind of in the general, when they're talking to people, they may have heard this called something else, right?
Yes. So EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques. So it's a series of techniques, but what you're going to hear in mainstream is the word tapping. And tapping, we are using our fingers to literally tap on certain points of our face and our body. And what we do when we tap those points is we activate the energy in our meridian system that's in our body. So if you can think about how the energy flows, it's almost like lanes on a highway, right? And when all the traffic's moving optimally, it's glorious. We feel aligned is a word that you can hear. We feel regulated is another word that you'll hear. We just have energetic harmony in our body. And the way EFT works is to help promote that energetic harmony by tapping on these points. And another thing that it does is it works with the messages that our body is giving us. So I believe that when we have symptoms, sensations in our body, those are all messages. And we take those and we work with them. So when we're tapping, we're also thinking about thoughts that we're having while we're experiencing these sensations. And we can help heal traumatic events, the way that we think and feel about them through this process.
Right.
And I mean, that's enough, right? But other than that, tapping is also a great way to help ease a lot of anxiety.
Yes.
It brings us right into something that we call parasympathetic nervous system, part of your nervous system. So it takes us out of a survival feeling and puts us into a more calm and harmonized state. EFT really promotes loving and accepting ourselves as we are, emotional freedom. We are here to feel however we want to feel. Yeah, and I mean, that is the basis of my mission, of my work, is loving and accepting ourselves just as we are.
Right. And thank you. So thank you for explaining that in a way that I think most people, because almost everybody has heard of tapping. Well, I shouldn't say that. Most people have heard of tapping in some form. But if you think about it, and again, if you're one of those people that's a little bit doubting on these things, that's okay. You can be doubting, because I was one of those people. But if you think about it, we naturally use a form of that. Like if we have a headache, what do? We put our hands here and we rub our temples and it relieves the headache, and we know that. I didn't know this till I was on a cruise, and a lady told me, it was a speaker's cruise, like learning how to be a speaker. And a lady told me, if you're ever in a situation and you feel like you need to cough, like if you start getting that tickle in your throat, just press really hard on like your middle finger top knuckle, and it eliminates that tickle in your throat. And I thought, this is BS, like serious BS. It works. Oh my gosh. I use it all the time now. If you have to sneeze, if you feel that tickle in your sinuses, just push on the side of your thumbnail and it stops that. And I'm thinking, we're just not in touch with our bodies. And I think that's what that EFT does, really, right? It helps us kind of, sorry, I went on a tangent there, but I mean, and the thing that I think is amazing is this only seems like kind of strange stuff in Western culture. Eastern cultures use this as part of their primary treatment for a lot of health symptoms. Am I right about that? Yeah.
You are. Yes, you are. And, the cool thing about it is that tapping has been around for hundreds of years. It is rooted in ancient Chinese medicine. So these practices are well proven amongst, hundreds of years. And EFT is based upon, using acupressure and acupuncture points. Right. So what you're talking about, aligns very much. But we have to remember that we are an energetically made thing. We are 96% energy. So the way that we are able to manipulate our energy and work with it, it's important for everyone to know how to do that. Yeah. And tapping is such an easy, in the moment, like super effective way to. I love it so much also because you don't need anything. You need your fingertips. That's it. Right. You don't need dark room. You don't need earbuds. You don't need anything. You just need yourself, your fingertips, and you can come back to that present moment, which is what a lot of us are trying to do, and more out of the mind and into our bodies.
And that's what I was going to say, because I believe I very much believe there's a place for therapy. So I'm never against the use of therapy. But for a lot of people who find that they've gone to let's say they've had a toxic relationship. I'm just going to bring it back to the divorce. Or let's say they've had a toxic relationship where they know there's been trauma, perhaps in their family, and when they were children, there was trauma, or they experienced trauma in relationships or at work or wherever. A lot of people don't like going to therapy because therapy requires you to kind of talk through that, keep reliving it. When you're using this work, any of these energetic works, including EFT, there's no reason to go back and relive that. You don't even have to think about it in your mind. You just have to feel the sensation in your body, and you can work on the sensation. You don't need to work on what's all the way, bring up all that story again, right, Kristen?
Yes, you're correct. So tapping does work with the sensation in the body. We know the body is giving us those messages, giving us that information. what we have to remember is that with traditional talk therapy, our mind, which is a beautiful thing. I am not saying it's not, because it's a beautiful mechanism, but the mind's primary job is to protect us. So when we are sitting down and saying we're going to talk about something that was really significant and that impacted us, the mind is only going to go so far until it says, this is no longer a safe conversation. So if we tap and talk, which is a technique, then we're telling our nervous system and our mind, our body connection, we are safe. It is safe to go further. So we really can, that's how we get to roots of things.
Okay.
So we do talk. Of course, it depends, right? We're gonna see what the client needs in the moment, but we do talk, but we do also focus on that sensation in the body.
Right.
And I'll just give a quick example of, like a lot of times when someone is dealing with anxiety is a label, right? We say, I'm anxious, but the first question is going to be, but where does that anxiousness live in the body, right? How do you know you're anxious? Well, I have this massive pit on my stomach. Okay, that's where we're going to start, with the pit. Because that's the way to the root.
That's it. And that's a great example. And I think that's one that most people, because we've all felt anxious at some point in time and thought, well, there's nothing to be worried about. I'm sitting comfortably in my own home. And yet, and I'm feeling like, oh my gosh, there's some impending really bad thing that's going to start happening here. And I think, I forget who told me that, what was the definition of anxiety? Anxiety is just worry without a reason or something like that. I can't remember exactly what the phrasing was, but yeah, we spend so much of our time worrying about stuff that it's not even likely to happen. Not even, that there's a 50% chance. It's highly unlikely it's going to happen. But one of the things, Kristen, I know that you help your clients do is really develop a sense of compassion for themselves. And I think for women going through divorce, or men as well, it's hard to be compassionate for yourself. It's easy to blame yourself or feel like there's something wrong with you or wrong with me during the divorce. How do you help people feel that sense of, or begin to get comfortable with feeling compassion for themselves again?
Yeah, well, the first thing that I typically have seen with folks that are going through a divorce is that they're very focused on the logistical part of the divorce. What steps do I need to take? If there's children involved or splitting assets or all these things. And after that sort of happens, they're left with this feeling of like, oh my gosh, I have failed in some way.
Right.
Failure is a big thing that comes up. And it's like, what now? And they hold sort of this burden of like, my marriage has failed. I have failed. I don't know how to, go forward. And they hang on to this concept of the failure, and it kind of spills over into next steps. So what I try to do is when we're in session, we focus in on the feeling of this failure. What does this feel like inside of your body? And we really start to feel into it, but coming from also the perspective of loving and accepting it as well. So we don't try to make the failure go away. We say, even though I have these feelings of failure, it feels like a huge weight on my chest. I can't believe that this has happened in my life. I deeply and completely love and accept myself anyways. And the more that we just foster that love and acceptance, no matter what's happening, that is how we develop true compassion for ourselves.
Right.
And we explore these parts of ourselves that are feeling this way, because not all of us feels that we have failed. Part of us says, whoa, what an empowering decision I made. That was really hard, but I know deeply that I made the choice that was right for me. So we also tune into that, this yin and yang part. We tune into the part that says, wow, you're amazing. You made this choice for yourself. It wasn't easy, but you've done it. We really enhance that part as well, and let these parts talk to each other and really help each other out as well.
Well, and that's what I think. That's why I was really drawn to your message when we spoke before, because it gets so at a point. I believe most people, I'm not going to say everyone, but I think most people who go through a divorce hit this point where all of a sudden they're maybe almost up to actually going through the divorce, like getting that final decree, and all of a sudden there's this sense of, this is all my fault. I could have, I should have, I would have, all of that stuff comes flooding in. And then, there's people who stay in very toxic, very unhealthy relationships. And there's a lot of dynamics there. But sometimes part of that is that sense of, I don't honor myself. I don't have any compassion for myself. I don't trust myself. And again, a lot of that is because of the environment they've been in. So that's not to lay any blame on anybody who's in an abusive relationship for staying, because it's very complicated, that trauma bonding and all that kind of stuff that's going on. But having that ability to begin to love yourself, for all, in spite of all your flaws, or even because of all your flaws, that's a really powerful first step.
It is. And, tapping can sometimes get the rap that we just tap to tap things away. We don't want to feel blame, we tap it away. We don't want to feel failure, we tap it away. It's simply not true. Tapping allows us to go more deeply into the feeling and safety, and that's where true transformation comes. So if someone is sitting there and blaming themselves, the mind will list the 800 ways that they should be blaming themselves. But the body is going to allow you to tune more deeply into the truth. And I really help clients uncover what that truth is.
Right.
And for us to see that truth, we have to be compassionate with ourselves and know that, like, it truly is okay. There is nothing you're going to uncover about yourself that is not going to be okay.
Yeah, you're not going to discover something really horrific or something that's that you don't already know. You know it. It's in your subconscious. You just have to bring it to the surface, right?
Correct.
So that brings us to a second point. And this is something that I think I've never heard anybody talk specifically about this, but if you've been in a traumatic situation in your life at any point in time, there can be a lot of fear of the unknown, and there can be a lot of unknown fears, like fears that just come to the surface that you can't really even trace the reason for that fear back. And one of the things that you do is you really help clients to alleviate that fear that has to do with perhaps past traumatic experiences. Can you talk a little bit about that and what that might be showing up for? Because I did a very bad job of it, but what that might be showing up like in somebody's life.
Yeah. So firstly, I just want to speak on fear a little bit. I believe that there's two different things really baseline on earth is fear and love. So when we can move more towards that love and less away from that fear, we are able to see things more clearly, and we're able to come from a perspective of that love and acceptance, which is where it's at. That's the key. However, when we're going through such a large transition in life, like a divorce, that looming question of like, what now? What's next? Where do I go? And sort of this innate way that we want to, I don't know, prove that we're okay or do better than we did before, or like this striving sort of, thought process that we've kind of been fed in our lives. We really have to take a pause on that. And where I come in is that we foster this ability to be able to really trust in ourselves deeply and trust in the universe deeply. I like to say, we really don't have control here of what's going on. We would like to think that we do, but there are some outcomes and processes that, are just better for us not to know about. It's a universally working thing that we can say, okay, I'm giving this up a bit. I'm surrendering, I'm letting go. And in order to make space for that, I mean, we can't be fearful of that. right? So even though I have this fear of what is next for me, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. These are some of the scripts that we use when we're tapping. So some of the things that we say as we're tapping. And we're able to get to the root of where that fear originated from. As you're talking about past traumatic experiences. And, when we talk about trauma too, a lot of people have a concept that trauma is a very large thing that's happened, a large experience. And it doesn't have to be.
Mm-hmm.
There's big T's and there's small T's. And when we use the word trauma, we're really talking about anything that has misaligned your nervous system. So anything that's gotten your nervous system out of whack is something that is traumatic. So it doesn't have to be this huge thing, but in this case, divorce is pretty significant. So when we're thinking about past traumas, the mind works in a way that it is looking for that to happen again, because we've had proof that it has once happened.
Right.
So we're really pulling that apart and saying, I'm going to try a different way. I'm going to try trusting a little bit more. I'm going to try going deeply in and using my intuitive power, that power source that is inside of us. And I'm going to trust the universe has my back. That doesn't mean I'm not going to take aligned action on things. That doesn't mean I'm just going to sit back and put my feet up, but it means that it's more of a balanced relationship, not so much of the forcing, and certainly not so much of the striving and productivity. You've been through a huge transition going through a divorce, and you need to have that space to be able to integrate and just be with yourself in a safe space.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. That was such a fantastic explanation. And I think it way better than I did. So thank you, Kristen, for that. And, we could go on for forever. And I say this on almost every podcast, but I honestly cannot believe how fast, like 23 minutes goes like this because you're such a fantastic guest and you're sharing so much that I think for me is a deeper understanding of all of the benefits that EFT and the other services you offer clients. Really, I can see how this would be incredibly helpful through the divorce process. Kristen, of all the stuff that you've covered, what do you think is the most important point today?
I think the biggest thing I want people to remember from today is that you are not defined by your experience and how you feel about it in the moment. It is part of you. And there is another part that is opposite from that. This part that deeply knows, that deeply trusts. She just needs to be uncovered. She needs a little help coming to the surface. So the experience that we're in, you're not in forever. You're not stuck there. You have the ability to move through and move beyond.
Yeah. Wonderful. And that's such an uplifting way to end this. Kristen, thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your expertise and really giving us like a really positive option if people are feeling overwhelmed, like they're blaming themselves, like they're fearful about situations. You have just really offered an option for everybody. If people want to find out more about what you do or reach out to you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram. You can always message me on there. My Instagram handle is kristen.curtis.eft. My website has more information about everything I've talked about today, and it is souleft.com. And I also would love to connect. You could just email me. My email address is my name, Kristen Curtis, 8613@gmail.com.
Thank you. I will make sure all of that gets in the show notes. So if people want to reach out, they certainly can. Kristen, thanks again for being here. It's been so enlightening. I feel uplifted already just listening to this conversation. So thank you so much. And I want to thank everybody for listening in. I know you're busy. Thanks for taking time out of your day. And don't forget to tune in again next week for another episode of The D Shift. Thanks for listening and supporting the D Shift podcast. If you would like to attend live trainings by our amazing guests and have a chance to ask questions and get answers from our experts, Join the D-Shift crew. For more details and to sign up, head on over to www.divorcecoachforwomen and click on the podcast page.